Welcome to 3 Secrets to Building a Profitable Personal Brand. My name is Mark Ensign, and what do you say we get started? I'd like to begin by clearing up a few misconceptions. When we talk about branding, the first thing that we often think about is the logo, color scheme, pictures, shapes, website, all that visual stuff that kind of shows up when we're, judging a book by its cover, I guess. And while of course that stuff is important, when it comes to your brand, the truth is that it's really only 10% of the problem. However, we tend to treat it as if it were 90% of the solution, right? So the truth is that the most important part of your personal brand is really your story or your message. The thing that people connect with, the thing that people fall in love with. And if you don't actively tell your story, somebody else will, and you probably won't like their version of it. And what I mean by that is if I were to do a search for your name and the only thing I could find is that picture of you doing a keg stand in college 20 years ago, then I'm going to fill in the gaps, and that now becomes your story. When you and I both know that you're much deeper than that. And, we all are. We all have a story. So before you start digging into your Google search and finding those pictures of me, not that I was doing keg stands, but although I did try to grow out my hair like Bon Jovi, so there's that. But let me tell you a little bit about my story. So this is a much younger me. And this is a much younger me on Broadway, where I spent the better part of 10 years of my career as the youngest bass player to ever play on that stage. Now, when you're a musician, Broadway is about as prestigious as it gets. It's a steady gig, it pays really well, and it adds an enormous amount of credibility to you as a player for your career and everything else. And there are tens of thousands of bass players out there who want this gig, and yet there are only 10 or 15 shows for all of them to fight over. And somehow I was the one that got it. And not only did I get it, but I got the gig with what was the hottest show on Broadway at the time, the Tony Award-winning Broadway show Rent. And I didn't get the gig because I was the most talented. There were plenty of players that were much better than I was at the time, as much as, I'd hate to admit that. I didn't get the gig because I was the most experienced. I was fresh out of college. I really had done nothing outside of playing on a cruise ship and in a wedding band at that point. I think I'd only been playing for 6 years or something like that at that time. I didn't get the gig because I was the most connected. I didn't know a single person in New York City when I got that gig, especially a single person in New York City that was actually making a living as a musician. I got the gig because I had herpes. Wait, no, that's not right. Hold on a second. Yes, that's right. I got the gig because I was impossible to ignore. And today, that's what I want to share with you on this webinar. And I want to share that secret that I learned back then about being impossible to ignore and how that applied to my business, how it can apply to your business, regardless of where you are right now, regardless of what you want to do. So, sound good? All right. At the end of the webinar, I'm going to give you a workbook that accompanies the webinar, as well as a bonus toolkit that will list all the tools that I use for personal branding for both myself and my clients. So make sure you stick around. I'll show you how to get it. The reason I kind of hold off sending that out in the beginning is because I really want your undivided attention in this thing. And you know what tends to happen. I send out the workbook ahead of time, and you spend the entire webinar kind of digging through it and jumping into the exercises and reading ahead and all this kind of stuff. And then you miss that one gold nugget that could have completely changed the way that you approach your business, your brand, who you are, what you do, the story you tell, and all that kind of stuff. So I really want you to focus. I'm not worried about you doing the exercises in real time. You're going to have the workbook that describes everything that we're going to go over, and with plenty of space for you to actually take on this stuff and actually do it. So for now, just stay focused, stay with me, close all the tabs on your browser, sign out of Facebook, mute your phone, stop checking your email, all that kind of nonsense, and just pay attention because my goal here is to really add a ton of value and have you walking away with this thing with a really new way to look at who you are and how you're showing up to the rest of the world. So, and I promise this whole thing will be worth your time. Sound good? All right. Moving on. So what I'm about to teach you is the exact strategy that I use with all my clients when we first start working together. Now, these are clients who have appeared in Success Magazine, who regularly earn 5 figures for their keynote talks. They've worked with Fortune 500 companies like American Express, Google, Berkshire Hathaway, and Chick-fil-A. They've been on stage with TED. They've made 7 figures as successful coaches. They've appeared on Oprah, Rachel Ray, Larry King, and they've literally reached millions of people throughout through their blog or their podcast or whatever it is that they're doing. Now, can you think about that? Can you imagine that, what your business could look like or what your career could look like if you were seen as the go-to expert in your space? Because that's really what we're doing. We talk about personal branding and messaging and all this stuff that we're going to talk about today. It's really about positioning yourself as the go-to expert. Maybe you have a best-selling book or you'll regularly be interviewed on the news, or maybe you'll be the keynote speaker for all your industry conferences, or maybe just doubling your business or something insane like that is what you want to do with this stuff. And I'm here to tell you that it's all possible. And, because if you're looking to disrupt your industry and stand out from everyone else that you're competing against, this is it. This is how you do it. I'm going to show you, I'm going to pull back the curtain and show you all the secrets. So in the next 45 minutes or so, that's what we're going to learn. That's what we're going to talk about. And this is about disrupting your industry, positioning yourself in such a way that you are impossible to ignore. Ready? All right, here we go. The first secret number 1, is your market. This is who you're for. This is a group of people with a specific problem that they want and need to solve, right? So you've probably done a similar exercise in the past where you're kind of nailing down who your target market is. It's probably called your ideal client profile, target audience, something along those lines. And it consisted of a laundry list of criteria that these unsuspecting victims somehow fell under. It was a list of them: age, gender, race, income level, location, hobbies, values, personality, lifestyle, just a host of certain criteria, just like that. And don't get me wrong, because I believe that there is some value in knowing knowing some of the specifics, knowing that somebody who wears red socks tends to spend more than somebody who wears blue socks in your industry or whatever that is. I often find that this is more of an exercise in frustration that very rarely pays off, considering the amount of time and energy that you invest in it. Perhaps 20 years ago, this may have worked really well. However, looking at the way businesses are now and the way people are now, I really don't know many industries that are so cut and dry that you can categorize people down to their sex, age, income, race, and all of these categories all at once to where you've narrowed your business model down to 8 people over throughout the country. Things have changed. We're human beings, and as human beings, we want to be treated like human beings, and nothing makes us feel less heard, less understood, or less cared for than a company who's targeting us based on some criteria that truthfully is just a fraction of a percent of who we really are as individuals. So when we talk about your market, we're talking about a group of people with a specific problem that they want and need to solve, and that's what we want to kind of break down. So let's start with the first part of that sentence. Let's start with a group of people. And rather than drilling it down and doing business based on gender or color or income, we want to drill down based on desires, goals that this group of people actually have. Because what if, if what you're selling actually helps someone get closer to their desires and their goals, it really doesn't matter how old they are, what color they are, or what their income level is. All that really matters is that you can bring them closer to something that they really, really want. Looking at my company as an example, we are a personal branding agency and we work with people, but not all people. The vast majority of our clients are speakers, authors, coaches, and consultants, but we also have plenty of clients who are also podcasters, real estate agents, athletes, and musicians. They're all different ages, different genders, different colors, different tax brackets, and they all come from different locations. In fact, the only thing that they tend to have in common is that they all want to stand out in whatever industry they're in. So that's their desire. That's their goal. If I were to focus on, this criteria as laid out in the typical ideal client profile, I'd probably be missing out on 80% of my business. So I don't care about the other stuff. I don't really care, whether you're, where you're from or what your sex is or what your race is, in order for us to do business together, in order for me to be able to help you. It doesn't matter to me. I care about what your outcome is. And so that's what I want you to focus on. So when you're talking about this group of people, start thinking about what their outcome is. What is it that they really want? The second part of that sentence is with a specific problem. So let's take a look. While knowing who you're speaking to is a great first step, they must have a problem. Otherwise, they really don't need you, right? And so there's a little bit of a psychology that comes with this. You see, there are two types of problems that you need to know about and you need to be able to solve. The first one is your external problem. This is the problem that lives on the surface, the one that's the most pressing. It's the reason they start their search for someone like you in the first place. And it's usually a short-term pain that they're currently dealing with. In the case of my company, the external problem is usually related to growing their business. They want to find more clients. They want to be able to charge more money, something along those lines. It's about growth. If you're in the health industry, it's probably related to losing weight or dealing with a health crisis. If you're in the financial industry, it's probably related to short-term disruption of your finances. It's that thing that's the obvious thing. When you're at a networking event, someone says, "Hey, what do you do?" It's usually the thing that you spit out. "Oh, I do this." Well, that you're speaking to that external problem. And, so what I want you to do, and you'll have a chance to do this in the workbook, is, think about who your market is and try to imagine what they're going through right now that would have them want to reach out to you or someone like you to solve that problem. The second type of problem that we want to focus on is their internal problem. And this one's a little more complicated, and it's not often really discussed, and it's not often really considered when we're talking about ourselves, our marketing, or our client base, or who we're, what it is that we do. This is that problem that lives deep down inside. In fact, your market may not even know that it exists, yet it's the problem that's going to drive them the most long term. If speaking to your external problem is what gets them to listen to you, it gets them to find you, it's that internal problem that gets them to actually hire you. So looking back at my company again, the internal problem that my market is struggling with is making a bigger impact, right? So they want more clients, and they want more business, and they want to charge more, and they want more money on the external side. But on the internal side, what's really going on, what's bigger than that, is they want to make a difference. They want to make a bigger impact. They want to reach more people. They want to leave a legacy. They want to change the world. Now that's not something that they're wearing on their on their sleeve. They're in a panic mode of I need more business, but what's at the heart of that is making a difference. And so if you're in the beauty industry, you might be looking to get your hair dyed or get your hair cut, but what's as your external problem, but that internal problem is maybe related to building self-esteem. Maybe you have a self-esteem issue and there's something going on there. Or in the real estate industry, it might be related to safety and security. Or perhaps, you grew up in an environment where you didn't have a lot of opportunity. And so now you want to move to a new house that has, that's in a really good area for schools because you don't want your kids to go through what you went through. Like there's stuff that's much deeper than what can be found on the surface. And that's your internal problem. So now when thinking about that market, think about what could they be going through that's really deep, maybe even a little painful, and start to think about that and start to imagine what that internal problem might be. And now the last part of that sentence. You see, knowing your market and what their problems are is great, but there's one more thing that they want and need to solve. And that's really important. You see, it's not enough to have a problem. There has to be a need to solve that problem. So for example, one of the gutters in my house leaks, and whenever it rains, water drips down from the gutter and onto the flower beds. It's a problem, I guess. There's just no urgency for me to call someone to fix it. It's not important enough for me to get up on a ladder and fix it myself. I genuinely don't care, really. The worst thing that could happen is that maybe the flowers underneath will get a little too much water, and even if it kills them, I don't know, I'll put a bird bath there or something like that. Like, it's just not important to me. It's not hurting anybody. Now, if that same leak was in the middle of the roof and it was somehow leaking in, onto my bed, knock on wood, and it was coming into my bedroom, dripping on my bed, you bet I would pay anything to have it fixed immediately. There would be somebody at my house right now working on the roof, and this is urgent. I need to fix this problem. And it's a similar issue, same amount of water, much different outcome. So in the case of my company, I help people find more clients, earn more money, and make a bigger impact. These are problems that my market wants and needs to solve. So think about your market and what are those problems that they're currently facing that they are desperate to fix, that they're clear on, and that they really want to fix. And what we're left with is kind of a fill in the blank sentence that kind of describes your market. I work with a group of people who want to external goal in order to internal goal. So putting that together for my company, I work with speakers, authors, and coaches and consultants who want to grow their business and reach more people in order to make a bigger impact. Now I'm crystal clear about who it is I'm targeting, who my market is, and what their needs are. The things that are plaguing them, the things that they really that they want and need. So now, and I know we're going through this stuff quickly, and I know you probably haven't nailed it down at this point, which is fine, which is actually good. That means you're paying attention. So I'm happy to hear that. You're going to have the workbook that's going to explain all this all over again with space to actually fill in this sentence and all the other exercises. So don't frantically write trying to figure out how you're going to fill in this sentence just yet. That you can do. Take all the time you need in the workbook coming up. But let's get into the second secret within our little formula here. So secret number 2 is your solution. You need to offer a solution to their internal and external problems. However, not just any solution. Your solution has to be different from everyone else. Because if it's not different from everyone else, you're merely a commodity. You're somebody else selling something else that everybody else already has. This has to be a solution that's different from everyone else, because that's really how you disrupt your industry. And think about it. I mean, Elon Musk disrupted the auto industry with the electric car. There were plenty of other electric cars out there, but he was actually not even plenty. There were more hybrids, but he was able to make an all-electric car that wasn't this weak little putt-putt of a car, but actually could compete against the some of the highest model cars in the industry. Jeff Bezos disrupted the way that we buy things, with this massive e-commerce store. I mean, if you remember when Amazon first came out, it was absurd, the idea that we would buy stuff online. And slowly but surely, it's gotten to the point where we literally buy almost everything online, or we can buy everything online. And it all started with this idea that you can you have this massive e-commerce store that Jeff Bezos had created. Steve Jobs disrupted the music industry with a new way to buy and listen to music. Just putting aside everything that he had done with Apple on the computer side, the work that he did with Apple within the music industry is amazing. I mean, we all had this, stopped everything that we were doing when he pulled this little thing out of his pocket and said 1,000 songs in your pocket. He disrupted the industry by changing the way people look at it. Everyone just assumed that there was no way to make an electric car that can compete. Everyone assumed that we wouldn't just be buying everything, including groceries online. Everyone assumed that the only way to buy music would be in its current physical format. And, and the list goes on. In fact, every single one of these people solved a known problem in a way that was different from what everyone else was doing at the time. They changed the way that we saw things. So for the second secret, your solution, the question is, what is it in your industry that everyone else is just assuming to be true? How can you change the way someone sees something so they can never see it the same way again? And looking back on my story with how I got on Broadway, one of the ways that I did this was by changing the conversation in terms of what type of musician made the ideal player as a sub. You see, I started by subbing for shows. I didn't get the full-time gig right out of the gate. They try you out by bringing you on as a sub for when the regular player is sick or on vacation. And while everyone else was claiming to have 50 years of experience and I was well connected and everybody else, I didn't have any of that stuff. And I couldn't compete with that. And I didn't want to wait 10 years to get the experience. So I changed the conversation. I reached out to them saying, well, you don't really need somebody that's got a ton of experience. You need somebody that can mimic or clone your style. So when you aren't here, the actors and the dancers and the singers and the band, they don't even know that you're not here. And that's what I'm gifted at. That's what I'm best at. I am best at, really being able to clone other styles of music and other people's playing styles. So when you leave, it's as if you're still here. And that changed the conversation, changed the way that people looked at this thing, because what ended up happening was the next guy that called up and said, hey, I've been playing for 30 years. Before they got an answer, the guy with the gig said, yeah, but can you clone my style? And that became the criteria for being a sub. What was taking people 5 and 10 years to accomplish, I had accomplished in less than a year. And now in terms of my business, I have a very similar approach where I've changed the conversation where, branding and marketing is not just about pretty shapes and colors and pictures and, animation and functional websites that just blow you away, all this other eye candy. It's 90% your message. It's that thing, that story, that way of connecting with other human beings. It's a different way to look at branding, but it's a way to look at branding that really works. And by taking that approach, I'm not competing with other web designers or logo designers and all this other kind of stuff. I've started to fall into more of a category of my own because I'm focused more on messaging. So you see that, that's why my approach is different, and that's why I stand out in that in that realm. So by looking at that problem differently, you just make yourself much more difficult to compete against. So that's the type of solution that you need to create for yourself. What is that one thing that everyone else in your industry is missing, and how can you change it? How can you correct it? How can you see it differently and describe it to people differently in a way that changes the way that they look at it so they can never see it the same again? That's what you're going for. All right, moving on. We're now on to secret number 3, which is your offer. Now that you have a market with a problem and they're willing to spend money to fix that problem, and you have a solution that's different from everyone else, you now need a way to deliver that solution to those people. In other words, you need a market. And but here's the challenge. We all learn differently. We all have different strengths. We're all in a different place in our lives, professionally, personally, financially. So you need to have several different ways to deliver your solution in order to accommodate everybody in your market. So the first type of solution is done by you. This is the lowest barrier of entry for your market, but it's often the most amount of work for them because they actually have to do everything themselves. You're just there to direct them on what they need to do. You're giving them the strategy, but they're in charge of implementing it. So a few good examples are a book, an online program, podcast, blog, email campaign, speech. These are things where you're giving them a solution and then it's up to them to actually take action on it. There's several benefits to having a done by you offer. Once created, you don't have to continue doing the work. In other words, once you write the book, you can sell, one copy, you can sell 1,000 copies. It doesn't matter. You don't have to rewrite the book every time somebody buys it. Because of this, the done by you offer is often very profitable because it doesn't require a lot of work after the initial work is done, and there's no ceiling to the number that you can actually sell. Plus, it's a very low barrier of entry, which means somebody that is interested in hiring you but doesn't want to pay, your larger fees. They can dip their toe in the water. Instead of buying your time for $5,000 or whatever, or paying $200 an hour for your help, they can spend $10 on a book and get a start or get a feel for who you are and what your strategy is, and then determine whether they want to hire you or not. This offer is also a great way to introduce yourself to someone in your ecosystem because it often requires the smallest financial investment of the three types of offers that we're going to be going over today. So let's go on to the next one. The next one is done with you, meaning that you work with the person purchasing the offer to help them get the results and solve the problem. So some good examples of this include group coaching, workshops, masterminds, live webinars, teleconference calls, pretty much anything where you're actively working through the steps of your solution with people. These solutions tend to be a little more time consuming because you're actively involved in seeing the solution through. Of course, that means that you can charge more, but it also means that there's a bit of a ceiling in terms of how many people you can impact at a given time, since you can't quite be as effective with a room full of 1,000 people that you could be, let's say, with a room full of 10 people, unless, of course, you're Tony Robbins, in which case you can apparently put 20,000 people in a room and be effective. But depending on what you do and how you work and what your message is, your effectiveness might drop with 20,000 people in a room. So you may have a ceiling of 20 or 30 or 50 people that you can help at a given time. So there is a little bit, or there's potentially a little bit of a ceiling, with this one. And that brings us to our next offer, which is done for you. This one is for those who either don't have or don't want to spend the time learning to do it themselves. So they hire someone like you to do it for them. And, examples are high ticket consulting, private coaching, services where you're actually doing the work. They're not doing it with you. They're not doing it by themselves. They're handing it off to you, and you are in charge of doing the work and getting the result. The good news is this one will pay the most of the three because it's so labor intensive. The bad news is it's so labor intensive. It will require the most amount of your time and energy. It will also, it also have a very low ceiling in terms of what you can take on because there's so many hours in the day. So if you're a coach and you have, your typical client consumes about 2 hours of your time each week, you're really kind of capped out at maybe 20 clients a week before you start working, 40, 50, 60 hours and start burning yourself out. So in addition to this one paying the most, it's the one good thing about it. It also has the highest rate of success since you have control over the results because you're actually doing the work. Now, here's the great news. You won't have to choose which one is right for you because you should come up with at least one offer for each type. Create an offer that your market can do without you, like write a book or start a blog or create a podcast or develop some kind of online program. You create an offer that your market can do with you. Put on a live workshop, start a mastermind, create a group coaching platform. Then create an offer that your market can have done by you, like a consulting option that takes it off their hands, private coaching option that holds their hand through the entire process. And when you download the workbook at the end of this webinar, you'll be able to kind of brainstorm and figure out which is the best option for you for each of these. So what's the best done by you offer that you can put together? What's the best done with you offer that you can develop, and what's the best done for you offer that you can put together? And so now that you have all this stuff together, let's talk about what's next. Because you've nailed down your market. Once you've gone through the exercise in the workbook and completed everything, you've nailed down your market, you've nailed down your solution, and now you've nailed down all three of your offers. And so already you're light years ahead of everyone else in your industry. You're on your way to disrupting, and you just need to start disrupting. So that's where your marketing finally comes in, where you'll need a sales funnel, website, social media profiles, and a bunch of other content. Um, it sounds like a lot. It is. That's why it sounds like a lot, because it can be a lot. But it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be as difficult, and it doesn't have to be as time consuming as either it has in the past, or as it feels like, and it also doesn't have to be as expensive. So I've been at this for years. I started my agency well over 15 years ago, and I've been helping individuals and companies for the better part of 15, 20 years in digital marketing. And I've always wanted to package it up into a program, that I can offer people. But there's always been this kind of problem that I've seen within this industry. And that's that online courses have just an absolutely abysmal completion rate. In some cases, the drop-off rate is as high as 97%. That means that only 3% of the people who actually buy an online course actually make it through the entire course. So when I started putting this together, I wanted a little more of that and a little less of that. So more, less, more. We want this one. So when I started putting this program together, I knew I wanted to be something that first and foremost just crushed the average completion rate. I was pushing for a 100% completion rate on the program, which seems absurd, but that's what I wanted. And I get that it's a pretty tall order, but here's kind of what I came up with in order to accomplish that. I figured the program has to be interactive. Just having a pre-recorded element would not be enough to get you through it. You know how things go. You get through the first couple of videos, and then just life gets in the way. So half of the sessions would need to be live. There needs to be two types of coaching included within the program. The first is group coaching, in order for you to get the concept down. And the second is private coaching in order to fine tune and follow through and make sure that you're on the right path. There needs to be a community of people going through the same experience with you that can hold you up. And these are the people that are going to, that are going to push you forward. They're going to be your first customers. They're going to jump up and down and celebrate you. They're going to, come after you when you've disappeared and you try to, you haven't done what you said you were going to do. Like, your community is going to be the big, a big piece of this thing. And then, of course, you need all the tools and the guidance to get the work done easily, at a high level, but also without breaking the bank. Like, how can we get this stuff done cheap? I don't want to spend $10,000 on a website. How can we get it for next to nothing and have it be an effective website that converts? It needs to be fun. Some of these programs are just absolutely brutal. So it needs to be fun. And most importantly, and I think this is where almost all online programs kind of miss the mark, is that it needs to be inspiring. If this program doesn't inspire you to get up a little earlier, stay up a little later, and go through this program, step by step, and look forward to what's next, and get excited about the stuff that you're putting together, then you're just never going to make it through. So this thing has to be inspiring, and so I kind of took all this criteria, and I put it together to come up with a program that's called Disruptive Personal Branding, and it has all those elements. The goal of the program is to create a personal brand that's absolutely impossible to ignore. Whether you want to grow your business as a speaker, an author, or a coach, or you want to stand out at work to get that promotion that you've always wanted, whether you want to create a side business to earn some extra cash, or you just want to reach more people or position yourself as someone who's a valuable asset in your industry, whatever it is that you want to do, this program is going to help get you there, because that's the foundation of this thing. The purpose behind this thing is to really figure out who you are, what your story is, what your message is, and how to package it up in a way that people will fall in love with, that people will pay you for, and that people will celebrate you, for having. So here's a breakdown of what you're kind of walk away with this program. We are going to find your disruptive idea. This is probably one of the most difficult aspects of either starting a business or becoming a speaker or coach or or standing out in the workplace. Like, what is that thing that's just different that makes people go, yeah, that, like that, like that, where you stand out, where people really kind of gravitate towards you, or they look up to you, they hold you up on a pedestal. So we're going to figure out what that is. We're going to fine tune all three of your offers, and figure out how to get them, not only, figure out what they are, but how do we put them together? What are they? How do we have them developed? What's the order of things? We're going to completely, you're going to completely design your look. That includes your logo, your website, your color scheme, pictures, all that stuff. So now you have a visual representation of who you are that lives online. We're going to segment your audience and build it into different categories. And we're going to build a funnel for each category. And that's going to determine how you're going to communicate with people. Some people are just going to be your fans. Some people are going to be your clients. Some people are going to be prospects. Like we're going to communicate differently to different people. So there's a connection. So it's not all just, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks. We're going to teach you how to be the trusted expert. How do you get those interviews on TV and in podcasts and newspapers, the TEDx talk and all that kind of stuff. And finally, we're going to learn how to massively increase your reach. How are you going to drive more traffic to this new thing that you've created? And by the time that you're done, it's a 6-week program. And by the time, you get through that 6 weeks, you're going to have a personal brand that just cannot be ignored. And I'm not going to, sit back and watch this happen. I'm going to be your partner in this thing in many ways. I'm not doing the work for you. I'm doing the work with you. And that's going to be what, one of those elements that's going to hold your feet to the fire a little bit. You're going to have those group coaching calls with the whole team every Monday, over the course of the project. You're going to have 2 personal coaching calls that you and I can get on the phone at any point during this program to make sure that you're on the right path. And for those times that you get stuck, you have somebody in your corner to help you get you unstuck that's done this with hundreds and thousands, not hundreds of thousands, hundreds and thousands of different companies and different people around the world. Okay, so here's everything that comes with disruptive personal branding. After the initial launch, the program itself is going to sell for $19.97. The program comes with all the pre-recorded videos, the instruction, additional tutorials and resources, instruction on how you can get the work done either by yourself or step-by-step instructions on actually outsourcing it and getting other people to do it for you, really inexpensively, but still getting a really high quality, and as well as all the resources that I use to get that stuff done. That's normally going to be $19.97 moving forward after this initial launch. Then we have the 6-week group coaching program that's going to come alongside this. That's $9.97. The 2 1-hour coaching sessions will run you, around $500. Facebook group membership, $240 a year. I'm including a WordPress template when we get to the website portion of the program. That's actually really cool. It's a WordPress template that my team has developed that is a high converting personal branding WordPress template specifically for personal brands. And it's been tested after years of doing this. So it's a high converting template. So right out of the box, you're able to put together a website very easily, cost effectively. It's going to be $97 a year to, when I start selling this thing, but you're going to have it for life, and it's included in this whole program. Of course, there's a 30-day guarantee. My ultimate goal here is, like I said, 100% completion of the program. So if after a couple weeks you're just not feeling it, or you're just not getting there, or you don't have the time, just reach out, let me know, and there's a full money back guarantee. I'm not going to beat you up or strong arm you. It's I don't want you here if you don't want to be here. That's just the way it is. It's more important to me that you're getting what you need. And so the total comes out to $38.31. But because you're on the webinar watching this, for a very limited time, it is selling for $9.97. And this is just for the next couple of days. That's not a scarcity thing. It's just because we're starting the group calls, but also because part of this program is, those 2 1-hour private coaching calls. I can't, if 1,000 people were to buy it today, that would be 2,000 hours of calls. It's a lot of phone calls to do in the next 6 weeks. So I do have to limit it to a fairly small number of people, because it's so hands-on, because it's going to require so much of my time. And because, you and I are working, in many ways, one-on-one on this thing, throughout part of the program, and now if you were to hire my agency to take this on, I mean, you'd be paying easily $5 to $10 grand for everything that we're going through this program. But again, because you're part of the group, you're part of the team, you're working on this along with us. We're going to do it for $997. And if you're interested, the URL to go to is disruptivepersonalbrand.com, and there you'll find more information on the program, as well as what you can do to sign up and get started and jump into this first class. All right, sound good? All right, so let's move on to some Q&A. You know what? While we're waiting for a question to come in, why don't let's go to the resource. So the resources for the workbook, if you go to markensign.com, markensign.com/workbook, you'll be able to download the 3 Secrets to Building a Profitable Personal Brand ebook. That's the workbook, and then there's also the toolbox, which is the Personal Brand Toolbox. And it's just a list of all the tools that I use to manage personal brands for both, myself and for my clients. So let's go through let's go through 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll kind of go from there. The first question is, when is the first live class? So we're going to be starting the live class on Monday. Now, once everybody signs up, we'll talk about schedules, and if Monday's not good for everybody, I'm flexible, so we'll make that work. But that does mean that by Monday, we'll likely be closing the course, at least for until the next round of folks started. So look to start the first live class. Now they'll all be recorded. So let's say if Mondays are normally good, but you can't do, the first Monday or the second Monday or whatever, then you'll have a recording of that course. And if you have questions or have anything that you want to go over, if you email it to me before, we have that live class, I'll certainly include it and just make sure that all your questions are answered. So yeah, absolutely. So that'll be, that looks like it's going to be on Mondays, as of right now. Okay. Question number 2. Let's see. What if I'm not tech savvy? Will I be able to apply the program? Absolutely. So there's a couple elements in this thing that I made sure to include. There is the step-by-step on some of this stuff, but there's also the ability to outsource and just leverage the resources that you have, and which is what I've done for most of my career. I've leveraged the people that are around me. I've leveraged different companies and solutions online, and there are ways to do it that are incredibly inexpensive. Something that might take you a day and a half to get done, you may be able to spend $40, through outsourcing, and get it done in a couple of hours. So that's what makes this program really powerful. It doesn't matter where you are on the scale of being tech savvy or not. That makes it valuable. It's that this stuff is going to get done. Either you're going to do it, or you're going to outsource somebody to do it, and you have all the answers either way. I'm giving you the sources. I'm giving you the things that you want to tell them in order to get the result that you want, and how to the way in which you should tell them about the project in order to get it done right. All right, let's do one more question. What do you say? What if I'm not a speaker, author, coach, or consultant. Yeah, you don't have to be. I mean, those are examples that I use. That my agency focuses mostly on those industries because that's just what we do. We work with higher end speakers and authors and coaches and bestsellers and all that. But this program is for anybody. I firmly believe that I don't care what you do, that you should have a strong personal brand because even if you have a job, you want to stand out in that job, and because that's how you climb the ladder within that job. Or if you're let go or if you decide to leave that job, you need that personal brand in check so you can get on to the next job and move up and not just make a lateral move or actually take a pay cut because people don't see the value that you have to offer. So having that personal brand, regardless of what you do and where you are, is just a must in this day and age. I don't know a single person or a single industry where it's not important. So I don't care who you are and what you've done or what you do or what you want to do. This will work for you. All right. So, all right, that's cool. I think that's, if anybody has any other questions, you're certainly always welcome to reach out to me. One more time, here's the workbook in case you missed it. It's markensign.com/workbook. And that's where you can download the 2 free resources. And thank you so much for sticking around. If you're interested in the program, it's disruptivepersonalbrand.com. There, you go over to that URL. You'll see more information on the program. You have the opportunity to sign up. And if you have any questions, my email address is marc, M-A-R-C, at markensign.com, MARCENSIGN.com. Thank you guys so much for being here and spending a little time with me. And I hope we'll talk soon.